The film begins with narration by Yelena, who, if you're not caught up, is the sister of former Black Widow Natasha and has pretty much had a shit life since the snapping. Just before Thanos interrupted the natural flow of life, Yelena had finally been reunited with Natasha, only to be blipped out of existence for 5 years. Then when she returned, she found out that Natasha had died, as well as her mother perhaps. We don't actually have anything on what happened to her, and the only lead she has on what happened is from the dubious Val, who tells her that Hawkeye is responsible. So of course she hunts him down, but then she finds out Val lied to her and gets the true story about what happened on Vormir and how Natasha sacrificed herself to bring everyone else back. So not only has she lost pretty much all her family, she has spent her entire life as a mindless killer and feels this growing emptiness inside of her, this void. So she jumps off a building. But don't worry, it's not to end her life. She actually is on a mission for Val. God knows why, but she's going to infiltrate some super lab and destroy all the evidence. See, Val is currently under heavy scrutiny by the United States government for doing some, let's say, off the books kind of work. While after whooping some ass on her way in, eventually she's down to a solitary guard, whom she has tied up and begins to tell her story to. But he seems less than interested in what she has to say and more than just trying not to get killed. However, as luck would have it, one of the technicians in a fancy white lab coat shows up, and he's just what she needs. He holds her at gunpoint and she asks him politely to put it down, but he tries to stop her anyway. She is forced to knock him out with a gunshot to the face, which ends up making him just as useless as the guard. Well damn, time to blow up the whole building then. She checks in with Valentina to tell her the job's done when we switch over to Senator Bucky Barnes, representing New York of course, who is just attending a meeting of the commission who is trying to impeach Valentina Allegra DeFontaine. That's DeFontaine, or she'll give you an earful. Basically, because she's been doing experiments to create her own super soldiers, she's done things that are considered very illegal, as well as the whole Red Hulk incident from Captain America Brave New World, and so they are cracking down. But they don't have any physical evidence, yet. Hence Val calling in her little agents to make it all go away. Killing the congressmen and other commission members would only draw more attention. So it's better just to get rid of all the research and start from scratch. They haven't cracked the super soldier serum yet anyway, so it's no big loss, as far as she knows anyhow. We then cut to Alexei Shostakov, the Red Guardian, who seems to be living the American dream. Well, sort of. He's got his own business, Red Guardian Limo Services, a tube TV from the late 90s, and all the snacks he could stuff down his gullet. Suddenly there's a knock at the door, and guess who's coming for a visit? A strange daughter, Yelena, and she really needs her papa. At first he mistakes her for a DoorDash delivery, but when she reveals who she is, he tries to spruce the place up in a hurry. And well, he's not fooling anyone. Yelena bares her soul to him, looking for some kind of comfort, and he tries to lift her spirits, but she's absolutely stuck in this funk. When she receives another call from Val for another mission, he tells her to jump at the chance, that in reality he has been incredibly unhappy himself and wishes he would get sent out on a mission being a true hero again. Yelena is sent to a secret facility out in the middle of the desert, but before she goes she tells Val she wants to be a real hero as well. Something more public facing. Val gives her an empty promise, which we'll come back to that later. As for the mission, Val gives her some spiel about how there's going to be a rogue agent trying to break into the facility. Yelena should do some recon, find out what she's trying to steal, and then eliminate her. Simple enough, right? The following day, Yelena makes her way into the facility, and it's revealed to us that the rogue agent is actually Ghost, one of Val's other associates. John Walker, aka US Agent, is also here, and he immediately begins attacking Yelena. Ghost, on the other hand, begins fighting with Taskmaster, who you might remember from the Black Widow film. This is one of my biggest gripes of the film, as well as the fighting goes down, which looks absolutely spectacular, by the way. Ghost is eventually able to kill Taskmaster with a shot to the head, thus ending her career in the MCU. While sure, maybe in the future they'll bring in Tony Masters or something to take up the mantle, it's a shame she didn't receive more character development or redemption, especially in this film, as it's all about dealing with the past and trauma, and if you've seen Black Widow, then you know she's been through a hell of a lot of stuff. Well, the fight comes to an abrupt end, when out of one of the shipping containers, a strange man crawls out looking disorientated and outright confused. He's a nice enough guy and he introduces himself as Bob. Soon after, the trio of combatants figure out they, along with Bob, we're all here to wipe each other out as they all work for Valentina, and they're all loose ends. But just then, the trap is sprung, the facility goes into full lockdown mode, and the heating units above them begin firing up, getting everyone inside ready to incinerate everything. Escape time. Using their combined skills and weapons, they manage to break out of the room before they get flambéed, and through some teamwork suggested by Bob, they manage to maneuver their way up a miles deep pipe back to the surface. It's actually quite funny, even though John nearly gets them all killed. However, Valentina has been keeping tabs on the whole situation, and through that realises that Bob is alive, which means her experiments actually worked. So she gathers up an army and heads to the facility to recapture her asset and finish the job of getting rid of the others. Using all of their talents, the group manage to sneak away, but then gets stopped at a checkpoint. So Bob decides to save them by turning himself in. The military is a bit trigger happy though, and open fire on poor Bob, hitting him with enough bullets to take out a building full of insurgents. But guess what? Bob is just fine. In fact, he's shredded. He's got like an 8-pack, it's quite incredible. Something triggers in him, however, kicking in his fight or flight, and while he does just that, he flies off into the sky before exhausting himself out and coming crashing back down, knocking himself out cold. While wandering the desert, Red Guardian and his limo come to the rescue, picking up the trio of surviving vigilantes. While working his day job, he was indirectly hired by Valentina to drive for her and overheard her conversation of their plans, and so he felt he needed to come and save the day. Yelena also fills them in about what Val is up to, as she stole some of the research before they escaped, including a file that detailed the Sentry project. But since no bodies were ever recovered at the facility, Val knows that they are still alive, and so sends out her forces to canvass the area and hunt them down. Cue an armoured convoy racing towards them down a dusty road. Alexei gives it his all, slamming his foot down on the gas pedal, but the limo just won't go up past 50 miles per hour. And so the Humvees are barreling down upon them, firing 50 caliber machine turrets, which the bulletproofish limo starts to fall apart. But then, just as Yelena decides to turn the tables and start blazing her own guns, one of the Hummers explodes and goes flying off the road. Dun dun dun! It's Bucky, riding up on his motorcycle, using the cool mind thrower gun thing that he had in Captain America Winter Soldier when he took out Nick Fury's SUV. He steadily makes mincemeat of all the government goons, but he's not really there to save our friends, and uses the last mine to also disable the limo. Bucky has his own agenda. He's also trying to take down Valentina, and he thinks if he hauls in some of her associates to testify, that will be the nail in her coffin. Cut back to Valentina, who has now returned to New York with her prize. Turns out it was Val who had brought the old Avengers Tower, including whatever was left behind in it. Though, thankfully, Happy snuck out all the replicas of most of the advanced Stark tech. She plans on turning it into something called the Watchtower, which in the comics is the base of operations for the Sentry. Here she wakes Bob up and tells him of what he's destined for, that he has powers beyond all the Avengers combined, and that he could be the saviour the world needs. Bob, who has struggled with self-worth and depression, is enthralled by this and takes her up on her offer, going full in, including dyeing his hair into a golden mullet and putting on a shiny pair of yellow and blue spandex. But there's something Val doesn't know about Bob, and that's his dark side, which can manifest physically as someone called the Void. Whenever Bob feels threatened or small and that darkness and depression creep in, this personality takes over. And much like his heroic side, the dark side has its own set of godlike abilities that seem unending. Bob also has a peculiar power that when he touches someone physically, he can see their worst fears, their worst moments, something which the Void feeds on. So, when our squad of heroes finally returns to New York to confront Val, after coming to the realization they all want the same thing and working together is the only way to stop her, she turns the tables on them by almost seemingly welcoming them. She brings them into the old Avengers Tower lobby, offering them all drinks while simultaneously they will put them down. Especially Red Guardian, who she refers to as Santa Claus, and John Walker, whom she calls Captain Wannabe. She then calls in Bob, now going by the moniker the Sentry, to show off her shiny new toy. Yelena tries to convince him Val doesn't have his best interests at heart, but Bob says no one really does. Val orders him to eliminate the others, and so of course they all go on the offensive, except for Yelena, who tries to stop the fighting before it starts. Bob easily defends himself, delivering a smackdown on all of them, but he doesn't kill him. Instead, he lets them all escape. When Val asks why, he tells her that he's a god now, and they weren't a threat, so he didn't need to. Val's furious that he won't follow orders, uses a backup device she implanted in him to take him down, and storms out, giving orders to a team to get rid of the body. Time for a new trial. Bob is far from down, as the Void now takes fully over. It's so cool how they did this in the film. He's basically this empty space, just a shadow, literally just a void, except for his eyes which glow an anonymous dark twinkle like some distant star or black hole horizon. He flies out into the sky over New York and at first just watches all the people, talking to himself about how burdened they are and how useful they could be to fuel his own power, which would finally give them all a purpose. So with a wave of his hand, people literally just start disappearing, turning into shadows themselves. The filmmakers got the idea of the effect from when the hydrogen bombs were dropped during World War II, where their blasts burned the people's shadows into the wall. It's eerie and downright terrifying actually. Our squad of heroes witness this, as well as Val, who calls in her own military response and a big old fight breaks out. Buildings come crumbling down, people by the hundreds get swallowed up in this creeping darkness, including a little girl, whom Red Guardian saves from falling debris, only to have her poof right in front of his eyes. It's very sad. Remembering back when they accidentally touched during their escape from the bunker, Yelena looks into the living shadow and decides to let it take her. Once inside, she begins to re-experience her childhood trauma of working in the Red Room and killing her best friend. She then realises this space she's trapped in is like a stage almost, like a film set. With a running start, she manages to break through one of the backdrop walls and falls into yet another memory. This whole place is like a maze of trauma, making whoever gets trapped in here have to relive their darkest times. Makes me wonder what that little girl is going through and how much therapy she's gonna need afterwards. Anyway, we don't get to see what the other characters' rooms are like as we stick with Yelena until she finds her way into Bob's memories. Bob had a super shitty childhood and life, grew up with an abusive father and a mother who blamed him for it. So sad. He became a drug addict and basically hit rock bottom as hard as anyone can. Which is how he found himself getting recruited for the Century Project in the first place, as they promised him that he would become a better version of himself and have a purpose. They preyed on him, poor guy. Shortly after, the others managed to find their way into Bob's memories as well, and all are reunited together. They tried to escape, but the final room is the same laboratory from the beginning of the film, and here is where the Void waits. Now, here's the twist though, as Bob's immediate response is to whoop the Void's ass. All he's really doing is giving in to his anger and the depression and the self-hate. Yelena sees this and she does probably the most unconventional thing. Something she wishes, has been desperately wishing for, and runs to Bob, putting her arms around him and holding him in close and reminding him that he is a good person and that he deserves love, and most importantly, he's not alone. This doesn't quite defeat the Void, but it does significantly depower him enough for Bob to take control and undo the whole Shadow Realm thing. The day is saved. Well, not quite yet. Now it's time to take down Val once and for all. But Valentina is cunning. She pretends to try to run away, ducking for a barricade, only to reveal a huge press conference she gathered when the others step through. Here she announces them as saviours of the city, the new Avengers, while Red Guardian is extremely elated at this as it's his dream come true for him. Yelena smiles and waves, then saunters over to Val and lets her know that she's in their pocket now. Unfortunately, Bob doesn't really remember anything that happened, not as the Void or even how they got out. The last thing he remembers is before they all started fighting. His golden locks are also back to brown, so I guess that's another list of powers, maybe? We cut to the credits and then of course comes the infamous post-credit scenes. It's 14 months later and the new Avengers haven't exactly taken the world by storm. Just like Sam Wilson, both in the MCU and from fanboys in the real world, they've gotten a lot of flack for not being the originals. Not only that, but Sam is suing them, or at least Valentina, for stealing the Avengers team name and logo. To combat that, Alexi creates new uniforms that say New Avengers with a Z at the end, as well as getting tons of sponsors all over his supersuit, like he's a NASCAR driver. But then there's a disturbance in the Force. Something is happening in space. Yelena refers to it as a space crisis, which Walker mistakes as her meaning they don't have enough room in the building. Because he's an idiot. Super Soldier Serum might have made him buff, but it sure didn't increase his intelligence. When she pulls up the intel to show the team, we get a glimpse of the rocket ship with a very identifiable logo on it. The logo is of course the Fantastic Four team insignia. Highlight with Reed Richards and co. will soon be arriving into the main MCU timeline. Well, at least we think so. It could also be Doctor Doom who stole a ship, or a bunch of other refugees. I guess we'll have to wait and find out when Fantastic Four First Steps arrives in theatres in July. So that about covers it. It's an exciting film with lots of heart, and we now have an official new Avengers team. Unless of course Sam wins his suit and forms his own team. What do you guys think of Thunderbolts? Are there any members you wish would have been included? Let us know in the comments below. But please don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel, and if you really want to support us, click that join button for exclusive perks. I have been your host Sarah, and thank you for being here with us today. Have a beautiful day and see you soon.